Hi, May. Thank you for being here
Thank you.
once again. Can you tell us something about you?
What is it specifically that you want to know?
You are a very successful person, and I'd like to know which way are you heading? And going to grad schools? Are you going to law school?
Oh, okay. That's a couple of questions in that that you asked me. But the first thing is, I am currently almost done a postgraduate program at Humber College in journalism. I wouldn't say that I'm really successful. I would say that I worked really hard to reach this point. I didn't come overnight. It's my 8th year in school, so I wouldn't say that it's something I didn't think about. I went to UT, I did a double honors there, and then after I took a year off, contemplating either I had the opportunity to go to law school or go into journalism, and then I decided that journalism was the best field for me, and I'm almost done the program, and I really enjoy it.
Very well. Where do you see yourself 5 years down the road?
In 5 years down the road, I hope I would be doing what I initially am planning on doing, which is investigative journalism. So I hope to be an investigative journalist, doing things, covering things that I guess are important to people. For example, the human trafficking in Ontario, in Toronto, it's on the rise, or things like poverty, the untold truth that is happening on our streets. Stuff like that. So I'm into the deeper hard news kind of stuff. And then later on, maybe in 10 years, 10, 20, 30 years, I'll be an executive producer, doing the exact same things I was reporting on. So
that's very good. The question that I want to ask you is, how can you work with an organization? Let's say you might work for CNN, you might work for Fox Television, CBC. Sometimes they have a format, guidelines, and I don't know how can you, work within those formats, because sometimes it's not easy, So.
I agree with you. Currently, I'm experiencing that now. My internship, which is at Global Television. Don't tell Global I'm saying this. Anyway, most of their stuff is really, really fluffy, and on a constant basis, I get told that you have to be careful how you're writing something, or what you're doing, or what you're saying. You want to represent global. So the idea here is there is a limit. I think there are organizations out there like Al Jazeera English, that I've noticed, because I tend to analyze these different, media organizations, that I've noticed who are really out there to report the news, who are bringing things, even though they're giving that image where people think they're such a horrible news organization. But they're reporting the truth. They're showing you what is actually happening. They're telling you this is actually happening, and this is, before they even changed to being the English version, this is the problems they were experiencing. Well, in terms of how CBC is and how, CNN, they're very, very big on being a certain way, reporting news a certain way. So you won't be seeing riots 24/7 on TV. You won't be watching documentaries or investigative pieces like you would in Al Jazeera's Witness, or Frontlines on, Hades, the untold truth of Hades. So the things they covered about political corruption. So their idea of delivering news is in a different kind of form that would kind of show people that this is real news. This is what we can bring to the table. Whereas if we're CBC, they're kind of like, or even like, I wouldn't mind working for CBC or whatever, but still their organization there's guidelines that you have to follow, and sometimes if you don't, you get fired, right? You lose your job. Take Rick Sanchez for saying things about Jon Stewart, which he shouldn't have said. He lost his job on the spot the same day because he was representing CNN. He went on a radio show and said something about somebody else. So when it comes to it being a business, it is more of a business than it is of bringing up the real issues. And that's kind of making it difficult for people who want to deliver hardcore news and just the news only, right? It gets mixed in with your advertisers. These people support you, so you have to be able to deliver news that kind of is on their side.
Right.
But then again, you have to be careful too. If you're new, you don't want to lose your job.
Definitely. I noticed that you speak fluently Arabic, and of course English. That's an advantage in your career. Um, you can function properly in Arabic culture and also in the English culture. Do you think that's a big advantage for you, or
Well,
you can see to?
I think that I've been told it's something that I should kind of like really bring to the forefront. Even though, you know, first and foremost, I'm Canadian. I do come from, my background is Middle Eastern, and I do understand the language, I do speak it, and I heavily understand the culture because I've been to the Middle East so many times. I've been to Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, so I've traveled in the Middle East, and and as a woman, right, who's from there, it is a big advantage for people in that area, because they feel that they can go to a woman and they can tell her, you know, this is happening, because they know that she can understand why their response is a certain way, right? So you go into a community that, you know, that's really heavily religious, for example, let's say in Lebanon or Syria or Iran, and you see the things happening to them. You don't go without being unaware. You go with the awareness of knowing that this is their culture. This is part of their everyday life. So when you go there, you don't go there to learn. You go there to actually cover a story because you already know the other stuff, right? So it makes it a lot easier, you know. And there isn't that much women who are Middle Eastern who are in the news in this type of industry because, you know, they get too scared to be able to talk to, you know. I take that back. They don't get too scared. It isn't something for them to travel, to leave behind family, to get involved in the conflict lines.
Do you see that media in from the North American perspective? Do you think that the media is biased towards what's happening in the Middle East? Talking about maybe CNN, Fox Television, and CBC. Do you think that?
I think they're giving their own spin on an issue, but the reason why I decided to get in this field was because when I was in Lebanon in 2006, I experienced those bombings, and I was in the north side, so I wasn't actually in the side that, you know, was being heavily hit, but the main roads were hit. And because I felt the bombs drop, I heard the planes, I felt the houses shake, I felt the windows, you know, shake, the curtains blow in and out every time a bomb fell. And I heard it. I felt that I was more inclined to do journalism than I was to do anything else because I felt what the people felt. And then from then on, I felt that it was my duty to be able to bring this to the other people, to be able to tell them this is what's going on. So I think what's happening with not only news organizations who are not experiencing this, or any kind of, you know, violence, or any kind of protest, or politicians who are not experiencing this, they can't tell the story. They can't make the policies. I think it's the journalists who are on the ground experiencing these things with the people are able to say, listen, like, these people are scared as hell. They're losing their homes. They're afraid they might die. They're having dreams that, you know, they're going to die tomorrow. They're not going to wake up, right? So I think that's why I decided to do journalism, because of that reason. Because you can go to these areas that, you know, areas where people are being taxed for their rainwater, and you can experience just by being with them what they're feeling and hear what they're saying, and then being able to relay that to the rest of the world is, I think, the biggest reason why it is, like, the 100% reason why I'm in this industry. Because you can't do that as a professor, you can't do that as a lawyer, you can't do that as a police officer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very demanding because it puts a lot of pressure on you. And at the same time, I notice that you want to do it because that's part of your heart. You know, that it's something that I don't know. It looks that way.
I wouldn't say that it's part of my heart because as a journalist, you can't be emotional with anything you cover.
Yeah, sometimes you see some media that don't cover the news
because
in a proper way. I would say
it's the idea of the type
no
of
transparency sometimes.
It goes back to the type of news corporation they are and what they cover, and they're at what one is enough for them, right? So, for example, you have, Global and City TV. They're just for the average person living in the city or outside of the city. They tell you, the Global tells you the news in just one sitting, right? Will tell you all the news of that day at 6 o'clock or 11, unless they have breaking news, right? So they're community, they're more community oriented, so they're more Toronto based. Same thing with City TV. City TV will also reach the GTA, because the GTA people come in to the city using the QEW, and they work in the city, so they need to know what's going on in the city. But you get CBC, and you get, you know, an American stuff like CNN. They're 24-hour running news stations, so they have more of they have more chances to cover national news and international news, right? So they get the chance to cover issues that are affecting BC for 20 minutes if they wanted to, or you know, the strikes. But then you get organizations who have made it. Well, CBC as well is a government-run organization, so it's part of the Canadian government, right? So when you work for CBC, you're employed by the Canadian government. You're not employed by a private corporation, right? CNN is a news organization, but they're not. They kind of have a line that they expect their anchors and the reporters not to cross, right? So once they cross that line, because they want to keep that certain image, right? This is what we are like. We're not like this. Whereas Al Jazeera English, if you watch these 3-4 stations, you'll see the difference. Al Jazeera English will spend a half hour talking about corporate corruption on something that's, you know, that we don't want to learn about, but we should know about, right? Or they'll spend like 20 minutes showing you pictures of, you know, of Egypt, or they'll do something like when they release the papers between Palestine and Israel, right? They're the first ones to ever report on it. And then the week following that was nothing but disinformation. So they're the first organization to break that leakage, right? So it depends on what type of news you want to deliver. And I find that they're moving fast. They were nothing, now they're, as Al Jazeera English is moving really, really fast, making its way well into so many homes, and people are really liking it because they have really good correspondence in all the countries. And they have, the majority of people on their board are Canadian, who worked in Canadian, the Al Jazeera English, who were well-known Canadian journalists, who ran boards. CBC, you know, the guy who used to be in charge of CBC is now, you know, one of their heads. So, you know what I mean? So they recruit the best, and that's why they're the best in comparison to the other ones.
In terms of family, your father, he supports your goals to be a journalist and to work for a big chain, like, you know, maybe CNN or CBC, whatever. Do they support you, or do you have sometimes conflicts with your mom and say, you know what, I don't want you to do this, or yes, I want you to do it? So how do you?
My parents, it was hard for them at first because, you know, the first thing my dad thought it was like, they'll send you to Afghanistan and someone will take you and torture you, and or you'll be dead, or you'll, like, you know, when I told him about that whole entire maybe doing an investigative piece on, like, you know, the human trafficking, the sex industry in Toronto, he lost his head. He's like, I'd rather have you been a professor or done law school or something than having to put yourself in a situation where you don't know if you're going to come out alive, right? So his idea is, he supports me because he knows how hard I work, but it's the father thing. Like, you know, I don't want nothing to happen to my daughter. I don't want her to be taken away. I don't want her to be in a battle or an earthquake or something. But my mom, she doesn't think like that. They talk, you know, between them when I'm not home, between them, like, you know, they'll tell me, you know, we talked about, you know, you and stuff like that. But it's still that parent thing, like, you know, if you become a successful journalist, you know, and you have to go somewhere, and something happens to you, we're gonna lose our mind. It's just, that's why people don't get in this industry. Right? Or they don't marry somebody in this industry, because that's like, you're always going to be on the road, or you're going to be trapped, someone's going to kill you, or you're never going to have time, or all that stuff.
You are well educated, well spoken. Sometimes, good looking too. Sometimes when you have those attributes, it might be a challenge for guys because they feel intimidated when they, how do you call this, when they have a friend or a girlfriend that is so successful. how do you handle the